Anthony Geisler, welcome to the Franchise Unfiltered podcast.
Thanks for having me, brother. It's good to be here.
Yeah, man, I've been looking forward to this. So, lot to dive into here today. Let's start off for those listening that don't know you. I mean, if you're in the franchise world like I am, I think everybody knows who you are. You've been a powerhouse in franchising for quite some time now. But for those listening, a lot of my audience, is aspiring entrepreneurs. So some of this is a little bit new to them. Give us a little bit of your background because that's going to play into a lot of what you're working on today and what we're going to kind of focus on in today's discussion.
Yeah, well, look, as much as I hate to admit I'm not 25 anymore, but I was probably just a bit after 25 when I started in this business with a brand called LA Boxing back in the early 2000s. Grew that, ended up getting acquired and merging with UFC Gym. And so Dana and the Fertitas as my partners, and ran UFC Gym for about a year. That was 2012 to 2014. And then, left for about 9 months while I found Club Pilates and, kind of took that from, I think there was a dozen plus stores, dozen plus franchises, and doing about 250K of, annual revenue. And we took that to 1,300 open, doing $1 million plus of annual revenue. On the heels of that, we added a second brand, a third brand, and eventually a 10th brand, and called that portfolio company Exponential that I took public about 4 years ago, and a little over 4 years ago now. Ran that up to, a multi-billion-dollar business. And so left there about 15 months ago to create Sequel. And, Sequel is pretty simple. It is all the top talent from my life's work. There's people who have been with me since LA Boxing and UFC and all the other brands that we're trying to count the other day, but I think a few people have been with me, and this is like brand 13, 14 or something like that. Wow. When you count everything up in the portfolios. And so, my current team has literally sold thousands and thousands and thousands and thousands of franchises and opened thousands and thousands and thousands of locations. And not too many people walking around in this business that can say that. And you really get kind of two choices in this industry, which is why we created Sequel, was to make a third choice. And really the choices you get in franchising, you get somebody who's opened, a half a dozen stores. They know how to run corporate units. So they think that gives them the right to go out and run a franchisor, which couldn't be further from the truth. Running a franchisor is totally different than operating corporate units, especially corporate units in one space. You take somebody that, does Pilates, for instance, in, Miami, and they know how to do, half a dozen units of Pilates in Miami. Does not mean you know how to find real estate in Phoenix or Dallas, Texas, or build in Phoenix or Dallas, Texas. The good news about those brands is that they have available territories. You can buy a franchise from those people, but what you're going to get is, not qualified staff, not a lot of capital, not a lot of experience and know-how. On the other hand, you get something in the Pilates space like a brand I used to own and still own a massive part of, in Club Pilates, and say, hey, you got 1,300 open, went from 250 to $1 million plus, and what a great brand and a great team. Go buy Club Pilates, but very hard to do because they're sold out. And so your choices are Bob's Burgers that doesn't know a whole lot, that's undercapitalized, or McDonald's that is going to work and you can't get, right? Yeah. Those are the two big choices out there. And what we did to create Sequel, thus the name Sequel, is the same team and the same labor, the same capital, the same infrastructure, same know-how you get from McDonald's over at Bob's Burgers. Now you say, why would you do that? Because it's pretty bad for Bob's Burgers, because you're carrying all the overhead and payroll, all that stuff that you need to have that kind of labor force, that kind of team. Mm-hmm. Thank God I have the capital to do that. And the team wants to do it, because even if you can hire people, a lot of people don't want to go. Sarah Luna, who runs Pilates Addiction for us, ran Club Pilates, ran Pure Barre, ran 3,000 plus open locations in 20 plus countries for me. And now she's running 11 Pilates Addictions, right? So some people, even if you pay them the same payroll, they don't want to come do the job, right? And so we have a team of gritty entrepreneurial operators that are here that have done the work that now you can have access to that, but we have all the open territories for you to be able to go and franchise. And so this hasn't happened before, right? You don't have a team that's done thousands and thousands of locations, whether that's selling or real estate or driving revenue or marketing or whatever. We literally have the best of the best people in the industry, kind of running a business portfolio company that has available territories.
Yeah, it's the best of both worlds, and because it's a catch-22, and I think a lot of people, if they're just getting into exploring franchising, they don't realize that, right? I mean, I can't tell you how many times I have conversations with people and I'm recommending really solid franchise options for them, but it's not yet a household name, so there's naturally a little bit of skepticism, right, on the part of the candidate, and so. But a lot of people, I think, just do not understand how difficult it is to get territory for these established brands. I mean, even brands that don't really do that well. Once you really get into like looking at the unit economics, but they've got a brand name, right? I mean, even with those, it's hard to find good territory. I think I placed someone with Club Pilates 4 years ago, and I mean, I don't know that I've even had the chance to show Club Pilates to anyone since then, just due to lack of territory and resells too. Like a brand like Club Pilates, where the model works, right? The franchisees are making money. They've got great support. You were getting them open, meaning opening crazy numbers of these Club Pilates locations a year. Resells don't come open to the general public, right? Because as soon as the franchisees, the other Club Pilates franchisees hear about a resell, they're going to gobble it up. I mean, you've got, some massive franchisees within the Club Pilates system. You see this in other brands too. So yeah, it really is, I think, a very unique dynamic that you've created. And then, the team that you've brought with you, and how long you've worked with some of these folks, I think, number one is a testament to your leadership, the fact that they would, follow you from brand to brand to brand. And, I imagine at Exponential, after you went public, they all had, shares and stock options. And so for them to, come over to Sequel with you is, I think, a big statement, and, can't underscore enough the value that comes to, these franchisees that are now getting on board with this new portfolio of brands that you have. I mean, I've got a guy looking at iFlex, your assisted stretching concept right now. He had a conversation with your brand president over there who used to run Stretch Lab, right? 1,000+ locations of assisted stretching over there. Blew his mind. Like, he was one of these guys real concerned about the real estate part of it, because he's never had to go out and find commercial real estate or anything. And once Verdine started walking him through, just how many of these leases, your real estate team has helped secure.
Yep.
He felt great about it. He's like, okay, this is a no-brainer.
Yeah, you get Adam Pennington on the phone, and he's like, hey, I've done 3,000 leases in the last few years.
That's exactly it. Yeah.
It's 3,000 grocery anchored retail shopping center, 1,500 square foot retail leases, right? I mean, it's very clear that, the team has done it, right? And that's why I said that's the third choice. It's never happened before, because you either don't have the capital to go put out, that much labor up front as a franchisor, and the executives aren't going to take that job. It's bad for their LinkedIn, even if you're willing to pay them, more, right?
Sure.
Because if it doesn't work, then where do they go, right? Because their last one looks like it didn't do great, and so they want to continue to keep playing for championship teams, and keep making their payroll, and so that's the good news. The unique thing we bring, which is why we've had about 1,400 territory checks in the last few weeks, because people understand where this is going, and they're either going to jump on the train or stare at the caboose. So
we'll get right back to the episode in just a minute. But if you've been considering business ownership, if you're already a business owner looking to expand and you're curious about franchising, I'd love to connect with you, answer any initial questions that you have, talk about a specific franchise, and detail the exact process that I use and have taken hundreds of people through to help them understand franchise ownership, find the right franchise for them, and conduct the necessary due diligence. Click the link in the show notes if you'd like to schedule a free, no obligation strategy call. I look forward to talking with you. And now back to the episode. Yeah. A lot of franchisors are building the plane as they go. You've already done this at a very large scale. You have the capital, right? And I want to dig into that a little bit more, because in my eyes, that's another big part of what makes this pretty unique is you don't have any outside investors, you don't have any debt. That gives you a lot of freedom and flexibility to really build this thing out the way that you want to do it. But before we go there, it's pretty special. I think I lost my train of thought, but the way that you've gone about doing this is there's a lot to like about it, and I think that it's part of why I wanted to have this conversation. I think a lot of people that are just not in this world, like we are day in and day out, they don't fully appreciate why something like this is as unique as it is. But I think a question that probably comes up for a lot of people is, okay, you've had all this success at, LA Boxing, UFC Gym, building out the Exponential portfolio, taking it public. Like, clearly you've personally done very well for yourself. Why come back for a sequel? Why, like, you don't need to do it. I imagine your quality of life is just fine without going and, building out all of these other franchise brands. So what's kind of your why? What is your mission behind sequel brands and coming back and doing this again?
Well, I think there's a couple. One's a team, right? 80% of the company is owned by me, 20% of the company is owned by the team. And so, there's an opportunity for the team to go get that financial freedom, to get that life-changing money, right? So one big piece is the team. And the team loves to build. I love to build. That's the why for me. This is my hobby. And so people are like, what are you doing? You're not working. I'm like, I don't know, work more. You see this all the time, right? I mean, Kobe played a lot longer than Kobe needed to play from a financial perspective, right? He just loved to compete and he loved the game. And Kobe only quit finally when his body was quitting and he felt like he was letting the team down, right? The nice thing, and a friend of mine who's a professional athlete said, he was like, look, at 41, I had to retire. Even though I felt like I could do more, my body was broken down. And he's like, guys like you could actually work till you're 80, right? Because you're using your brain more than you're using your body. And so, for me, it allows me something to do, right? I have a 7-year-old and a 10-year-old. They go to school all day long. They dance in the afternoons and the evenings. So my quality of life is good. I do get to take my kids to school in the morning, and I don't miss opportunities with the kids. Yeah. And so I'm still able to do all that. I don't think my wife wants me home 24/7. So
I can relate to that.
Probably makes my marriage work long term. And we're getting to do something we love, which is put entrepreneurs into business. And so we're excited about the dynamic. Big chunk of the company went to Miracles for Kids, which is a mission to support critically ill children and their families. So everybody's here playing for themselves, but also playing for a community that's much bigger than us. And so allows us to, give millions of dollars to them and a big exit to them because they own a piece of the equity of the company. But you're right, where we sit today, there's no outside equity shareholders. There's no outside debt. This office behind me, we just had our weekly meeting, and, we all sit around, we talk about what's working, what's not working, do more of what's working and less of what's not working, and make decisions. And when we walk out of this office, the company's different, and it's not, we're going to have to wait 90 days for a board meeting and create a beautiful, PowerPoint presentation to present to people that don't know about the business to get a decision on how to run the business. And so, we're excited about that opportunity as well.
Yeah. I wanted to ask you about, kind of what some of the main differences in your eyes are, having this freedom to really go and build sequel brands the way you and your team want to build it versus outside shareholders and things like that. So obviously speed is part of it, right? You don't have to get votes on decisions and get weigh in from the board and deal with the shareholder meetings and all of these things. But long term, like fast forward 10, 15 years from now, like what do you think that, assuming nothing major changes in terms of outside investors, I think I've heard you say pretty emphatically you don't plan to go public with sequel brands.
No, definitely
But
not.
so like what do you like long term, big picture, what do you think that really like where can sequel be 10 years from now compared to what you did with Exponential over a 10-year or so period?
Look, if everything stays constant, like you said, it actually should, lend itself to higher revenue stores, more stores. I don't know how many brands, potentially more brands. We'll see how life kind of works out. But it definitely allows us to make quick decisions, but also allows us to make the decision we believe is right. I sold control of Club Pilates, which ultimately became Expo in 2017. So, I wasn't the ultimate decision maker or majority shareholder or controlling shareholder for the last 7 years of the 10
Yeah.
years that was there. So,
Yeah.
I didn't necessarily agree with every decision that got made. And so it became groupthink. And then,
Yeah.
a lot of other people weighed in. Which here we have that, but it's qualified, seasoned executives with 3,000 plus recent store openings under their belt that are using that toolkit to make the best decision they possibly can.
Do you think it's better for franchisees in the long run not having outside shareholders that at the end of the day probably don't care all that much about franchisee profitability unless it starts having an impact on their return?
Yeah, like it depends. That's like saying is marriage good or bad? And I would say, well, it depends on who you marry, right?
Fair. Fair enough.
Not all private equity is good or bad. Not all debt's good or bad. We had a debt lender called Cerberus over at Expo, which if you look that up, it's a three-headed dog that guards the gates of hell. And they had a very aggressive reputation, and they were our lender during COVID, and they could have really put the screws to us, and they didn't. I mean, they were gracious, supportive, just phenomenal. Phenomenal people. Couldn't be any different than what people said their reputation was. I'd do business with them again in a heartbeat. They did a great job supporting the company. And so I also think sometimes you can have a reputation as a private equity firm or a debt lender for certain people, depending on how that situation went, and can have a
Yeah.
completely different situation, in your relationship, right? You see people break up all the time, and they go on to date and marry other great people and have great lives. And so maybe they were oil and water, and they just had to find water and water and oil to to come together. But yeah, where we sit today, we're very happy that we have a small kind of circle of trust where we're able to make decisions with qualified people and in short periods of time.
Yeah. Yeah, I think that's a valid point, right? Not all, because I think private equity and franchising gets talked a lot about these days, and it seems that the general consensus is that it's more negative than positive, at least if you're looking at it through the franchisee lens. And I've seen plenty of examples personally where that's not the case.
Yep.
So I think that's a very valid point. I've heard you say a couple of times, you're 10 years smarter now as you guys, really get ready to step on the gas with
Yep.
sequel. Talk to me a little bit about, what that 10 years smarter translates to in terms of how you think. Because I mean, we've already touched on numerous things today, like a lot of success at Exponential. Like, but what do you think you learned in that experience that you'll be able to do better, or that you'll do differently, as you really start to scale out sequel brands?
Look, I say 10 years for myself, but the reality is we've got 70 employees on staff already here, right? And so all of them are probably 10 years smarter too. So yeah, you end up with a lot more than my 10 hours. You probably have, 500 to 700 years of additional experience, right? And so when you look at like our Pilates business, when we went to grow that out, even something as simple as, look, we don't want to put stuff on the walls, because in order to put stuff on the walls, you've got to back the walls, which is really expensive for franchisees. And then you have to take the reformers and put them along the left wall and the right wall, which means it's got to be wider, so you don't, more real estate and less looks at real estate that may be more narrow. How do we create a machine that has all in one, everything together that it can run down the center? How do we soundproof stuff? How do we do these things, all these extra costs? And so what we did is, along the walls where we put up our wood and our lighting, we just put soundboard. So we attach the wood to the soundboard. So now when everything goes on the wall, it goes up soundproofed, right? And we don't have to reinforce the walls because we don't have anything going into the walls, right? And so my thing was like, look, I want to build a Pilates studio in the middle of the desert, right? Be able to conduct class. And so if we don't have to touch the walls, it's less construction, it's less permitting, less worries, right? And so just come in and drop the kit in very quickly and efficiently. So that's one small thing at one of the brands, right? That we've seen over time, but it really comes from all these different departments where people are saying, hey, look, in marketing, this is 10 years of experience. We should go down this path, right? Technology, we should go down this path. And so you kind of have all the different disciplines. You've got a guy like Adam at real estate who's done 3,000 leases. Like, his 3,000 first lease is going to look a lot different than his 11th, right?
Sure.
The relationships look different. The terms of the agreement look different. So we're able to get into business a lot faster. We have vendors reaching out to us saying, hey, we want to get in, different than back in the day when we were trying to find vendors and convince them to take us on, right? It looks a lot different today than it did before.
Yeah, those are good examples. I like the kind of detailed, may not sound like that big of a deal to someone on the outside listening in. Oh, don't hang stuff on the walls so we don't have to soundproof it. When you magnify that across 1,000 plus locations and the reduction in cost, right, per location, that's serious savings. And when you're a franchisee, trying to get your first, even not your first, second, third, whatever number studio open, it's all about how cost efficiently can I do it, and also how quickly, can I get to open, right?
Yeah, I mean, our goal we talk about all the time here is to make the item 7 cheaper and make the item 19 more expensive.
Yeah.
Right? Like, how do we get the item 19 north and get the item 7 south? And then we're constantly comparing what we're currently doing against the 7. We just did some rebrand work, over at Pilates Addiction. And I told the team this morning, I said, make sure all the real numbers we have now, go comp that back to April's FDD and make sure that we're right, And they said, well, we're coming in at or under those costs. And I'm like, great, franchisees won't, they won't be upset if it's under. And so, it's making sure the team is constantly going back to update those numbers as well, and seeing if we can use leverage and scale and intelligence. Sometimes you can, and sometimes you can't, but of getting things more cost effective as we go forward.
Yeah. When it's like, it's all those little adjustments add up, right? And I would point out another, big thing, just the fact that you have a team of 70 people already.
Yep.
Like a lot of franchisors that have thousands of locations don't even have a team of 70 people,
We do. We do. That's why. So I talked about,
that's a good example of like, you learned like, hey, we need to staff this thing out before we need all of these people necessarily. Correct. And that makes it a hell of a lot easier to actually support these franchisees as we're growing.
Yeah. I mean, look, you talked about it with the plane analogy, right? It's most people are building the plane in the air, which if you were on an airliner and you looked out and someone was doing a repair, you would, you'd probably freak out.
Shit your pants, yeah.
And you probably want to get on the plane if they were telling you the one wing is on and they're going to put the other one on at mid-flight. You probably want to get on. For us, we're able to build the plane on the air, or not in the air, on the ground, and figure out, does it work? How does it work? Refine stuff, test stuff, and then go do some takeoffs, and make sure that all happens without passengers. So we're doing it. It's coming at a cost, right? Our
Sure.
payroll is probably north of $800,000 a month with maybe $100,000 of royalty coming in from the stores, whatever it might be. So it's definitely a negative play and will be for a while for us financially. Now we're not crazy, right? Eventually the stores will get sold, they'll get open, we'll drive revenue, and we'll get there. But we don't need to be there today. We need to be in the business of providing the best support, the best teams, best labor that we possibly can for franchisees, and then we'll kind of grow into that org chart that we have.
Yeah. Going with the theme of, what you've learned, just over all the years you've been in franchising, has your view changed at all on the type of franchise owners that you're looking for at Sequel? Like when you look back at, Club Pilates, or maybe Stretch Lab is even a better example, because like Club Pilates, you had some legacy owners or people that got in, a very long time ago. But like, is that a pretty similar, kind of avatar, or like, do you have a somewhat different view on like who you really want as your franchisee across your brands right now?
It's pretty similar to what it was. We did a really good job at Expo of vetting the franchisees the best we could.
Yeah.
The process is the process, right? So when you're still running, you're selling 1,000 a year, you're still, maybe running 3, 4, 5,000 people through whatever it might be. So you're still doing your best to get the best of the best. People will still fall through the cracks, and
you can never bat 1,000. That's for sure.
You have great people where life changes. The divorce rate, I think, is still 50%. The majority of these are married people, right? So you got a 50-50 shot that they may still be partners in 5 years.
Fair point. Yeah.
So I've done more marital counseling than I think I've done anything as a franchisor. So it happens, right? And so people have parents, right? The age that a lot of these franchisees are at. You have parents that are getting sick and they're having to relocate to take care of parents, or they're passing away, heaven forbid. And you've got the stress of that. They're having children. There's a lot going on in this part of life, right?
Yeah.
For franchisees too. So I always thought it was a combination of trying to choose the best people, but the most stable people, trying to get people with capital, people with experience. And that's what we're looking for. So, we're still looking for the same people. And, we had a lot of great success at Exponential. Not everybody, had an amazing outcome, and not everybody put 100% in. Right?
Well, for sure. And look at any organization, whether it's a franchise, Fortune 500 company, a professional sports team, they're not all top performers. It doesn't work like that. Like there's always going to be that bell curve. And, to your point, so many things can change from the time someone decides to become a franchisee. And, by the time they're a year or 2, 5 years into it. And I have this conversation with people all the time that are, trying to, think through like worst case scenario. And I think personally, 12 years in franchising, I've seen very few like catastrophic failures. Like usually the quote unquote failure is a lot more in the vein of what you just mentioned, that, big life change happens and now they just aren't in a position to focus on the business. We've owned franchises that, just wasn't doing what we'd really wanted to do. We weren't in a position to put in as much time and effort as we should in the past. Having kids and stuff. And you know what? We were able to turn around and sell it to the franchisee next door. And it wasn't like a home run, but it certainly wasn't a failure. And it certainly wasn't, catastrophic. So yeah, there's a lot more, I think, of those types of examples. And, I would agree. You guys at Exponential did a good job of really kind of knowing who you're looking for. And, it's definitely a multi-unit play in most cases. It's more of that executive ownership model. Your franchisees are not buying themselves a job. If it's Pilates Addiction, they're not, coming in to run Pilates classes. They're wearing the CEO hat, in their business. And so for that reason, you tend to attract people that have the financial means to, scale to multiple locations over time. I'm curious, do you have any thoughts, or like, what is your philosophy on, is it better to have 1,000+ location brand with fewer really big owners, or with a bunch of 3 to 4 unit owners? Do you have a philosophy on that? Do you feel like one strategy is better than the other?
I don't know one strategy is better than the other. I do like having the independent franchisee with, call it, like you said, an average of 3 or 4 units that are going out there and turning the key. I think you get into 80, 100 units, you probably have private equity and debt, and you're serving at the pleasure of other people, maybe making other decisions that may or may not be good for the brand or for the franchisor, but maybe good for your personal economics. And
Right.
so, if I had to choose between the two, I'm always going to fight for the small entrepreneur. Then I'm going to fight for the big business.
Yeah, makes sense. I think that's a fair answer. Run us through the portfolio today. We've mentioned a few of the brands, but you currently have 4 brands. We don't need to dive too deep into each of them, but maybe just kind of give us the brand quick overview, and then I'd love to hear your thoughts on, like, why this was the lineup that you guys started with, and kind of what the strategy was behind that.
Well, look, we wanted to break the kind of starting portfolio into 2, right? 50% of modalities that we know are kind of tried and true. So we did that with Pilates and stretching. We've had a lot of success, about 2,000 open stores for this team in just those 2 modalities. And then we wanted to pick up, what's next. And we believe EMS with Body 20, electric muscle stimulation suit, now dry and disconnected in small group, is where that needs to be. It's massive in Europe and across the world, just not here yet. So we want to be ahead of that curve. It is coming here, but the technology needed to evolve, get FDA approval, which it has now. So we're excited about that. And then infrared, sauna, and red light, which, recovery, longevity. You see this with the Maha movement, which we're a part of. You see it with guys like Gary Brecka and Dr. Hyman and all these people that are now out in the space working this high quality of life longevity piece for the world. So we said, hey, 4 brands, 2 modalities, tried and true, 2 that are hot and coming, just haven't really hit the franchise space yet. So with that, we ended up with Pilates Addiction, our modern Pilates base. iFlex, which is our assisted stretching brand, Body 20, which is our EMS brand, and then Beam, which is our infrared red light brand. And so we have those 4. 4 probably won't be it. There'll probably be 5 or 6 or 7. We'll see how life goes. And they will stay in that kind of fitness, wellness, longevity type space.
Yeah. No, that makes sense. Like, the 50% of the portfolio being kind of the tried and true, and then 50% of the, what you guys think is next. I've been preaching to people about EMS for years now. And to me, it seems that Body 20 is the clear front runner, because they were still probably emerging, but somewhat established brand before you guys acquired them. But the technology really is just now getting to a point where it's going to be a much more scalable business, and there's some consumer awareness, I think, that still needs to happen. But it is getting talked about. You've heard Joe Rogan talk about it. Mike Tyson, was using it when he was training for his last, I'll do fight in air quotes, but it's starting to pick up some awareness. So I'm personally really excited about EMS, and then I think anything in the recovery space is pretty exciting. We'll get right back to the episode, but I wanted to quickly share a free resource with you. If you're curious about franchise ownership and want to learn more about how countless people, including myself, have leveraged franchising as a way to create more freedom for themselves and to take control of their livelihood, I've put together an ebook. It's called Franchise Wealth Creation, and it's the perfect starting point for anyone that's just curious to learn more about this whole franchise thing and how I've helped hundreds of other people navigate all the steps involved in understanding and researching franchising. So click the link in the show notes, fill out a short form. I'll send you the ebook. I think it's a great starting point if you're curious at all about learning more about franchising. All right, let's get back to the episode. If you had to guess, right, we're going to assume that you're not going to stop at 4 brands because we all know that you're not. How do you see the mixture playing out between like fitness and recovery or wellness? Because Exponential, really, with the exception of Stretch Lab, was really fitness, right? Are you bullish on this recovery wellness kind of trend? Do you think it's like a fad of any sort that we should be wary of? Like, how do you see that mix playing out over time?
If living longer and better and healthier is a fad, I hope it's a long one. I think the American public are getting educated, and I don't know that education can go away.
Yeah.
In the 60s, cigarettes were good for you, and you were cool.
Right.
I think most of the world, whether they smoke or don't smoke, would look like they were hiding under a rock if they said cigarettes were good for you.
Yeah.
When I was a kid, CNH pure cane sugar, that's Hawaii, the little Hawaiians, and that was good for you. You wanted to go support CNH pure cane sugar. I think today the general American public believes that sugar is bad for you, or you're probably hiding under a rock, right? So there's just things that have evolved. When I was a kid, if you were a good parent, you took your kid to get a Happy Meal at McDonald's. Today, if you picked up someone's kid and you went to get them McDonald's, you may ask permission from the parents to take their kid to McDonald's and get them fast food. So the world has changed. I don't think that's a fad. I think it's a change. I think you saw Maha Moms vote for Bobby Kennedy. Bobby Kennedy is not new. He's not a new candidate. You see the people that are in the news today that are around the current administration and just out in life, regardless of kind of how you see politics. People are eating better. I've been on a clean diet for almost a decade, and I can tell you I used to have to hunt for real food 10 years ago. Now I can get it almost anywhere. If you know how to read a label, you can pretty much get it anywhere. You look at the clean sauce companies like Primal 10 years ago had one flavor. Now they've got like 50 or something.
Every flavor. And it's good too. It's not like it doesn't taste like crap. It's good.
It's not far off. My dad used to call it Nutri-Cardboard, right? Because everything that supposedly is good for you. You got cheese that couldn't melt, all sorts of things. So, I think the world's evolved. And so I think the forward-thinking people are trying to figure out how do we play in that space from a wellness perspective, from a retail perspective, and that's happening. You have guys like my friend Gary Brecka who, opens up a Zoom call and gets 75,000 people on his challenge, right?
Wow.
It's insane. Gets hundreds of millions of views. Has people from all around the world trying to fly him there and pay him whatever to give them some tips. People thought I was crazy drinking salt water in the morning almost 10 years ago. They thought I was completely nuts.
That was a game changer. That's like the easiest, cheapest hack to feel great first thing in the morning. I started buying the actual salt that he recommends not long ago, but I started doing the salt. I mean, look,
almost 10 years ago, I went to work out with a trainer and I thought I was going to die. He killed me within about 15 minutes. That trainer, being a genius for his time, a guy named Damon Sewell, he handed me a red Solo cup, put salt in it, mixed it, and gave it to me. And at that point, I'd have drank anything to feel better. I literally thought there was going to be a 911 ambulance situation coming up in my future. And I drank it. And within about 5 minutes, the ringing, my vision came back. The ringing left my ears. And I actually finished the next 45 minutes of my workout when I literally was thinking, like, I've been in the ring with UFC fighters. I've been all sorts of stuff. Never was thinking I was going to end up in a hospital. I thought for sure I was going to be on a gurney with an IV bag. But it just makes sense, right? When you do go to the ER, the first thing they do is put you on a saltwater bag.
That's right. Well, I mean, that's what the original Gatorade was, really just salt water and lemon juice for the most part. Now it's full of sugar and crap, but the original Gatorade. There's so many things like that.
Yeah, so I don't think it's a fad. It's
I agree 110% that, like, Americans in general are paying a lot more attention to their health, what they're putting in their body, being more proactive in how to take care of themselves and extend their longevity, but also their quality of life. I still think, there's a lot of people out there that are going to have some concern around, some of these different, like cold plunging, for example. And I know none of your concepts right now are doing the cold plunging, but like, that's not a new thing, right? Cold water for, recovery. But you hear a lot of people kind of saying, yeah, well, this is just, the whole cold plunge fad where everyone's talking about it, everyone's doing it, and there's a lot of people out there like, oh, I don't know if I'm going to, invest $500,000-$600,000 to set up a cold plunge place, because I don't know that people are going to want to continue doing it at that capacity for that long. So I don't know. I think a lot of that concern is probably pretty unfounded, but let's say, fitness has been around forever, but we have seen certain fitness, modalities or training methods kind of come and go as fads.
Yeah. I mean, when you see them far on the fringe, right? The issue with cold plunge and having just an entire cold plunge place is you can take a cold shower at home.
I've got a pretty nice cold plunge setup that keeps the water cold, and it was like $3,000. Not like nothing crazy.
You can do it for way cheaper than that. You just need to lower your body temperature over a duration, right? You don't even need to. In my opinion, everyone's got an opinion on cold plunge, right? But what you're trying to do is your calories are as temperature, it's body temperature leaving, exiting your system, and so. Gary will talk about that, right? Like you can die, and I forget his exact math, but it's like you can die in 72-degree water, but you can't die in 72-degree air.
Yeah, that's true. That is true.
Can you get your shower down to 72 degrees? Probably easy. Colder than that, right? Easy. And so, are there better ways to do that? For sure, but people can start by taking a 3-minute cold shower and getting through that. So there's ways to get 70-80% of the benefit with zero cost. But look, I think we'll continue to see this longevity, wellness, recovery, whole food diet, sleep, and movement. We'll continue to see that to be a massive trend that just doesn't stop in America, because it is elsewhere. There's just certain things we do here. I think it was said Joe Rogan or somebody that said was like, look, they make Skittles without all the garbage in it everywhere else in the U.S.
Everywhere else, and then they complain when they
you don't know how to make it that way. Well, have your European plant ship the stuff to the U.S. if you don't know how to do it, right?
Yeah, it's
just we were willing to put up with it here, and I don't think people are anymore.
Yep, it's wild. The difference in quality of food. Like you go to Italy or some of these places in Europe, and you can eat an entire pie and you feel fine because it doesn't have the enriched flour. I mean, all the stuff that Gary Brecka talks about, and credit to him and people like him that have these big platforms that have, I think, done wonders when it comes to educating just kind of everyday people on a lot of these things.
God
Because,
bless them. They're awesome
well, we
social
were
workers.
we were
They're a lot of
fed we were fed so much BS over the years in terms of what was good for us and what we should be eating and stuff like that. So yeah, I agree totally with all of that. There's this huge kind of just pivot for so many people, and you guys are really on the forefront of that. We'll wrap this up, but any kind of final thoughts in terms of just what you'd want the listeners to know in terms of the opportunity that's there today with Sequel Brands and kind of the vision going forward. I mean, to me, part of what makes this as exciting as it is all the things we've talked about, but also thinking about the potential of what this could look like 5 to 10 years from now and how exciting that could be to get in ground floor now, right? Like I think about, I mean, when y'all were really getting Club Pilates started, I was probably in college still, but if I could go back in time and like have the foresight to be like, hey, maybe I lock down 3 or 4 of these bad boys here in coastal North Carolina, like, my life's great right now, but I'd probably be in a different, a little bit of a different situation,
Right.
That's exciting to think
Well,
about.
shit,
Like,
if I could go back and buy 50 from myself, I would in a certain area, right? I mean,
right.
it's
Yeah, for sure. So,
hindsight's great.
I mean, anything else? Is there anything that I should have asked you about that I didn't?
No, look, I think when your listeners are looking to get into business, for themselves especially as a new entrepreneur or new operator, you're franchising because you're trying to get rid of some of the risk, right?
Mhm.
It's still a business, it's still a startup. It
Yeah.
is not just add water. But if you were going to build a new F1 team and you were going to ride in that car, you realize the car goes fast. It's still a car. You're in it alone and you're going to race it around a track with other people. That risk is there regardless. But do you
Yeah.
want to build an F1 team with someone who's built 1 car or 5 cars or 3,000 cars and championship brands, the largest in Pilates, the largest in cycling, the largest in bar, the largest in stretching, the largest in yoga? I mean, we're the largest of almost everything
Yeah.
across all these different modalities. And so if I'm going to have someone build me a car and I'm going to have someone run my team in the pit in something that I already realize has some inherent risk, just like going up in a plane or going out in a car on the track, I'm going to do it with a team that's done it thousands and thousands and thousands of laps and reps, right? Because my chance of risk is just less and my chance of getting more support is higher. And that's the team that I want to do it with if I can do it with them.
Well said. Well said. And I think we're working on getting brand presidents from each of the brands on the shows too, so we can kind of take a deeper dive into each of them. But in closing, it should also be said, because I don't think we really touched on this, like Pilates Addiction is not just like Club Pilates 2.0. Like there's some very distinct differences in
Massive
the look
difference.
and feel of it, the client avatar, the actual workout, the equipment that's being used. Like there's some very big differences. So I want to make sure people understand that. Same thing with iFlex. It's not just Stretch Lab with a different brand slapped on it. Like there's distinguishable differences. And I think that's important as well. So anyways, Anthony, thank you for your time, man. I really appreciate it. I know how busy you are. This was a blast, and look forward to seeing this rocket ship take off, and happy to have the chance to be a part of it.
Thank you for being a part of it, brother. I appreciate your time.
Yeah, absolutely. Thanks, everyone.